Get the latest Impact podcast right into your inbox each week. Subscribe by entering your email address at impactpodcast.com to make sure you never miss an interview. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. This episode of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Closed Loop Partners. Closed Loop Partners is a leading circular economy investor in the United States with an extensive network of Fortune 500 corporate investors, family offices, institutional investors, industry experts, and impact partners. Closed Loop's platform spans the arc of capital from venture capital to private equity, bridging gaps and fostering synergies to scale the circular economy. To find Closed Loop Partners, please go to www.closedlooppartners.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. This is a special edition. We've got today with us Robert Bernard. He's the Chief Sustainability Officer at CBRE. Welcome, Rob, to this Impact Podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Hey, we were talking a little bit offline, so I want to bring that conversation online. I would love you to share where you grew up and how you got on this wonderful and important journey that you're on right now at CBRE.
Excellent. Yeah, so I grew up in a small little town in the northern corner of New Jersey called Hillsdale, New Jersey. I think you might know it.
I had a great childhood in Hillsdale, New Jersey, like you did. So very great town.
And so my journey sort of had me wandering all over the place, but we'll get into it today. I ended up spending 20 plus years out on the West Coast at Microsoft, where among other things, I started and ran their environmental strategies and sustainability for about a decade. Then ended up back on the East Coast doing some private equity work. And then over the last 2.5 years, I've been at CBRE, helping hopefully transform the way we think about sustainability here in not just CBRE, but commercial real estate in general.
So, before we get into CBRE, which I'm so excited because we've never had you guys on before, talk about being, where did you get the mindset that you wanted to be in the sustainability world? You were Microsoft's, of course, you're humble. You were truly Microsoft's first chief environmental strategist. How did that come to be?
Yeah, if we go back in time, sort of 2007, 2008, the world was sort of accelerating into, I'll call it an awareness about sustainability.
Right.
And so as the world's largest software company, it was very much an opportunity for us to think about how does the intersection of what software can do, not just how does Microsoft operate, which became a big theme over time, but what could software do? And we were actually approached, there was something called the C40 cities, and they wanted to track carbon in cities across the world. And they didn't have a software solution to go do that. And so they approached Microsoft, and just because I've been very vocal inside the company about the importance of software on sustainability, my phone rang, and they're like, hey, the C40 Cities wants to talk to us. And that sort of led from one thing to the next. And then in partnership with Accenture and SAP, we actually ended up building either the first or second instantiation of the CDP platform. And then from there, it just sort of was off to the races, like, hey, we need to be more deliberate as opposed to just reacting to people calling us. What do we want to do in the world on sustainability?
And so you were the first chief environmental strategist. What was it like, and what is it like coming in and actually having, that proverbial whiteboard, and it's up to you to vision this out with leadership and make it a reality?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I'm so lucky. Like, I happen to be at Microsoft and I happen to be vocal about the importance of it. And they chose me to sort of help figure out the journey. And CBRE never had a chief sustainability officer.
Well, that's why I want to put the first time there, and then I want to tie that back to what you do now at CBRE and coming back in with the white page, proverbial white page. And how was your experience different? Because you knew a lot more than you did the first time you did that.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of difference, but there's one common theme
Let me hear it.
that sort of permeates both, which is
Yeah.
what does the company that anybody listening works for, right?
Right.
And then what are the things that that company can uniquely do in the markets they operate in to advance the agenda of sustainability? And can you do it in a way that absolutely makes business and economic sense,
Well,
right?
I'm so glad you said it that way. Is that really what I find to be when I get to interview so many cool and important people like you that are doing impactful work with your colleagues? Rob, the theme I'm getting now, the last 6 months or 8 months of these interviews and podcasts is this, that these highly politicized and highly charged acronyms, alphabet soup of acronyms that have become sort of the vogue the last 5, 6 years, are sort of a little bit falling by the wayside and now tying back to what you just said, but what is now summed up as materiality. Materiality as to the vision and the mission of CBRE, not just doing sustainability randomly or in a void or where it just looks cool, but really doesn't make sense, more virtue signaling. It's more now about the materiality of the core mission of the brand and doing sustainability that ties back materially to the core brand's mission. Does that sort of become
Yeah,
the,
and I think the thing, and it's great to see the evolution, right? But
yeah,
the whole thing is like transforming our economy to
yeah,
be way more efficient. And we take the word sustainability and park it, take ESG and all these sort of
got it.
acronyms that exist around sustainability. But if you look at it at its core, it's about a much more efficient way of doing whatever business you happen to be in, right? And then can you do it in a way that actually has a neutral or potentially even positive impact on the infrastructure of the planet, right? So if we think about it that way, you're like, okay, this is a classic business transformation opportunity, right?
Linear to circular, linear to circular.
Linear to circular, extractive towards, again, circularity, renewable, abundant, limitless sources of energy over time. All of these things, if you take a long horizon perspective, the faster we make the transition to those types of ways of operating, the more profitable we're going to be and the more productive we can be.
So you joined CBRE about 2.5 years ago?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so let's just tee this up for our listeners and viewers who don't know CBRE, the amazing CBRE. First of all, to find Rob and his colleagues at CBRE, we're going to put some exact links in the show notes. But overall, it's CBRE.com, CBRE.com. Annual revenue, 36 billion a year. Over 140,000 employees around the world, and of course, all the countries you serve is global. Now you walk in again, proverbial white page 2.5 years ago. How do you start this kind of journey with this kind of massive, you came from one massive brand, you're now at another massive brand that touches all parts of the globe. How does that journey begin at CBRE then?
Yeah. And I think the way I would describe it is what existed at CBRE, and which wasn't dissimilar to Microsoft, was well-intentioned chaos, right? So let me give a little
Okay,
bit more
that's great.
context. So CBRE, and at the time it was probably 6.5, 7 billion square feet. Now it's 8 billion square feet that it touches globally, right?
Oh,
And when you go, okay, and it's just an approximation, but just to put that in context for the viewers, take all the energy from like Denmark plus Switzerland and then a bit more. So the scale is massive. And you've got a lot of really smart people inside the company, right? But they're disconnected. So you got people in Spain doing awesome stuff. You got people in Germany doing great stuff. And then here in the United States, and you get the idea, in APAC and everywhere around the world, people doing really good stuff. But they've created basically a siloed solution for their clients wherever they happen to be in the world. And so if you literally were to travel around the world physically or virtually, you'd see that CBRE had a whole bunch of different things to say, and they were all great. So then my job was to sort of extract out what are the patterns across all of these great solutions and offerings the company has. Where are they inconsistent, and how do you make them consistent and unified across the company? And so we created, I mean, the first thing we did after I interviewed several hundred internal and external people was create a very simple structure and a very simple strategy. And something that, and it's kind of interesting because I've been doing sustainability, like I said, since like 2007. The complexity has exploded.
mm,
I
mm.
mean, we could spend an hour just talking about What does CSRD mean? And how do you do reporting? How do you report to CDP? How do you think about SBTI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So you have this mass complexity, and our job is to simplify that because the goal is to actually accelerate like value creation and to accelerate sustainability. So in order to do that, you've got to take this complexity and make it very simple for internal customers and external customers to understand.
How do you, I love that, what you just said. Well-intentioned chaos is such a brilliant way of summing it up. How do you then remove silos when you come in? And is it easier to walk into well-intentioned chaos, or is it easier to walk into a void of anything going on in sustainability and just literally starting from ground zero? How did, when you intellectualize it, how do you come out on that?
Yeah, I think the answer is both create opportunities. And the
Right.
reality is both exist simultaneously.
Right,
In some markets, we have this, this well-intentioned, not to overuse the phrase, but like this well-intentioned chaos.
right.
But in other markets, you'd go or other parts of the business and people are like, yeah, we're not thinking about sustainability at all. So we have both of those conditions that exist. Right. But if you take, again, back the fundamental thing, and like we can talk about business and how you think about
Yeah.
return on investment and all that stuff. But it's like, start with the end in mind. What's the outcome we want for the customer? Right? Improved outcomes for the customers. You start with that, and then you start to walk backwards. And there's two things. If you're already working on sustainability and I can help you go faster by giving you tools and frameworks and value propositions and relationship access that you didn't have before, you're super excited in this world where you used to be islanded in a given country to be like, wow, I've got the power of this 140, 150,000 person company behind me now. I get to go. If you haven't been in the game, because you just haven't thought about sustainability, we say, look, you can actually differentiate your business through sustainability for your clients and customers. Now all of a sudden you start to lean forward in the chair versus if I show up and say, hey, John, you know what? You got to do this, 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 and this, and this because it's corporate overhead and corporate tax. You're like, hey, Rob, I got 1,000 other things that happen in my day, literally. Right? Like, what's in it for my team?
Right.
Like, and a lot of people say this, like, I'm super into the environment and I do these things personally, but I have to justify the action. So my job is to say, let me translate outcomes and actions into things that are relevant to you as a stakeholder in this company or in this world.
I'm going to just start with a simple example. Are suite leaders, when they're looking for corporate offices, if I have a choice of if I'm a C-suite leader at a large corporation, and now I have my broker and he's showing me two AAA beautiful buildings in choose any city, USA, in downtown Chicago, that I'm going to put my headquarters for my fast growing AI company into. And when my broker's showing me these two buildings, one's a CBRE managed building and one is a competitor. And your building is AAA LEED certified, whatever that's called, platinum certified, and the other building is not. Am I, as a decision maker, are you finding, practically speaking, would I rather, even given if the rates are a tick higher, am I choosing the LEED certified so this way I can put that in my annual impact report and it could also permeate the culture of my company in terms of how things are done?
Yeah, so I think the answer is it depends, and it's not universal, right? More yes than no. So I think we did a survey, and we can sort of put the links in the show notes.
Sure.
That says, I think it was somewhere around 70% of occupiers said yes, this was a key issue in their decision making. And I'd go even further, where if you said to me Chicago, which is interesting,
Yeah.
we now literally flew over to London. Your ability to rent space or actually lease a space if you're an owner requires certain levels of increasing sustainability. So in some cases, it is no longer even a choice. The market basically is saying, hey, you have to take certain action as a landlord because there's regulatory pressure as well. So depending on where you are, it is not just occupier choice, it's regulatory pressure or investor choices. And many investors are saying, wait, my buildings in the long run are going to be worth more. If there's certain things I do, like who doesn't want to be in a more efficient building because it means that you're paying less in energy bills. Oh, and by the way, it means they probably thought a bit more about air quality and all sorts of other stuff. So it usually comes, like you said, AAA spaces, two AAA spaces in Chicago. The interesting and not surprising thing is, generally speaking, there's a high correlation with high levels of sustainability and other attributes in the building. So those things often go together, but yes, 70%, I think is the number, and it'll be in the show notes. Like think, oh, this is important enough that it's actually going to influence my decision at the end of the day.
And we're going to get in later about cross regulation across different continents and how you reconcile that and rationalize that in your leadership also, because that's a whole different topic I want to get into with you. Let's go back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, though. Taking the simplicity, but the challenge of the shift of being ahead of this linear to circular economy shift. So how do you look at taking what are traditionally liabilities, just call them waste streams and waste streams in your buildings, and turning them into products or services that are now assets and no longer liabilities? How does that shift from a linear to circular economy work within the framework and sustainability at CBRE?
So I think there's a couple of different things to think about. And
Yep.
we can talk about maybe also what does CBRE do in our own spaces, because we're just like
please.
our
Go
customers.
into
We
that.
have like 650 buildings, and we're
Yeah, go into that.
so and we can use ourselves almost as an example, which is,
Yep.
hey, if I'm going to be more circular, the first thing I have to do is start with information. Like, how much waste do I actually have in my buildings and my
Right.
spaces that I occupy? How much am I throwing out? How much could I theoretically should I? Because we know what like optimal rates and zero waste, and we do this with a lot of customers, which is like, hey, we can get you to 90% plus diversion in your spaces if that's an issue and it's important to you. And by the way, more often than not, in most locations, you'll actually be able to do it more economically than if you're actually spending to landfill a lot of stuff. I mean, just think about that trade-off, which is,
Sure.
I have a material which can be used as an input to somebody else's process, or it's going to end up physically sitting in a landfill. Those things are very different. So that's an area that we think about it. But it's not just about what you would think about, like, where do I throw my garbage? It's also like, how do you think about all the different inputs and all the different aspects of how you run your space, right? So now think about the electrons coming into your building, right? So and hopefully we'll talk a little bit about energy and electricity.
Yeah.
You know, when I first got here, we had a small team thinking about some energy stuff, but we weren't a significant player in the energy space in terms of sustainability. So we went out and we actually said, hey, if I'm going to help our clients address the issue that you're talking about, we have to have a very strong position and place in the market on energy. So we went and we purchased the renewable energy brokerage and advisory business from NRG, which is a big power company here in the US.
Sure.
Because we said, look, if we're going to provide a holistic service to our clients and a solution set, we got to cover the whole thing, right? And we're going to talk a little bit, hopefully in a few minutes, about water as sort of the next frontier in that. But
Yes.
The first frontier was like, we already did a lot of the operations in the building. Then we went to energy, and now we're going to water, and you can expect us to keep marching down that path over time.
Got it. It makes sense. But yeah, talk about, where does that come from, though? How do you decide to strata what to attack first and what to attack second, third, and how does that work?
Yeah, so I think it's the intersection of two things. Importance to the client, number one, always.
Right.
So energy, after you've already chosen a space to work and live and you fit it out and you're running it, like, energy has got to come next, especially if you have any kind of carbon commitment, right?
Yep.
The next thing is, if you start to look at, and we're doing this in a lot of clients, is we actually looked at climate risk modeling. Or to your point, like, I'm going to choose two buildings in Chicago. We actually had a client hire us. Well, we've had several clients, but a client comes to mind, which is like, they hired us to look at space in Manhattan. And we looked at 46 locations. And we were able to rule out a whole bunch, even in the city of Manhattan, where buildings literally catty corner from each other had very different climate risk. Topography in New York, how water systems work, where the mechanical systems were. So in a case of another hurricane type of inundation, there was actually going to be very different impacts for that client depending on which building they might choose.
Wow.
So now you go, oh, okay, so I got climate risk, I got operational stuff. Now I actually want to think about, where do I source my energy in my supply chain? So that's sort of how we started to start. And we may have gotten it wrong, but we're just trying to start with what we think our clients' biggest issues are and sort of march our way towards creating a whole end-to-end suite of things that we can do either through our own services or through our partners.
As this show has covered the topic of sustainability dating back to 2007. So sort of the same path as your journey as well, in terms of how far it dates back. And sustainability, as you said, has been a great evolution. Talk about why commercial real estate and what you do and all the billions of square feet that are under management by CBRE really plays an important part in the whole sustainability sector around the world.
Yeah, if you just look at the math, 40% of all energy is used in buildings, right?
Oh, wow.
Okay. And so, and there's different models that say how much is commercial and residential. And if you look at growth of energy use today, data centers, AI, right? Like we know what the reality is. And so that 40% may stay at 40% or it may actually go up a little bit depending. So like our industry has to step up, right? And it's a huge opportunity. And to some degree, it's an obligation of commercial real estate companies around the world to address this issue.
What are you 2.5 years in, which is enough time to get the ball rolling the way you want, but of course, lots still to do. What are you the most proud of to date on how CBRE is working towards advancing sustainability as a whole, globally speaking, on a macro basis?
I think the number one thing starts with get in the room. So when I think about the number of customers who have hired us to be in the room with them, whether it's, as a thought partner, as an operating partner, as a broker for their energy, or some combination of all of those things, the more rooms we're in, the more impact, however we want to measure it, we can have. And so I'd say the number one thing is the increasing volume of customers who we are working with is the number one thing that gets me so excited every day. Because once I'm in a conversation, like if I'm talking to you, John, I'm like, hey, John, what's important to you?
Right.
And all of a sudden we're down in a conversation, and to you, it might be water. And for me, it might be, I don't know, I've got a lot of manufacturing and it's the waste stream from my manufacturing.
Oh.
But now we can have that conversation. We can help you on whatever part of the journey you're focused on.
Rob, what changed? How much has that changed to that exact point of what's important to clients like me when I go into commercial real estate opportunities? How did that change, and how does that continue to evolve after COVID?
Oh, it's interesting. And I wish I could answer that question better because I joined 2.5 years ago, which was post-COVID.
Right. Understood.
Right. But I think the thing that is changing real time is, especially for large companies who are gonna have more and more dependency on AI, right? The level of prominence of thinking through their impact on sustainability of their data strategies and their AI strategies is just coming into the conversation even more than as recently as 2 years ago.
But my commercial real estate is where I spend most of my life, practically speaking, maybe more than even home. Has air quality, more natural sunlight, and better, building hygiene come into play? Are people more focused on that post-COVID? Is what, even though you weren't there, you have access to information that predates you in the commercial real estate section. Do you feel that people are much more concerned just personally about the space that they're in on a regular basis now?
I definitely think there's more concern about well-being at the intersection of commercial real estate and people's experiences. And so a lot of that, frankly, spans in a great way, well beyond sustainability, right?
Got it. Understood. For our listeners and viewers who've just joined us, we've got Robert Bernard with us. He's the Chief Sustainability Officer at CBRE. To find Rob and his colleagues and all the important and great work they're doing in sustainability, please go to www.cbre.com. There'll be direct links also to all his other great work at CBRE in the show notes. You don't have to stop, write anything down, or stop walking the dog or lifting your weights or whatever you're doing while you're listening to this. Rob, I know you have an announcement to share with our audience and listeners today. I'd love you to share that now.
Absolutely, John. So, we're really excited, and we've been talking quite a bit about, sort of walking down the continuum of incredibly important things to our clients.
Yeah.
And so last year we purchased, like I mentioned earlier, big renewable energy brokerage and advisory business. And increasingly, especially because of AI, but not only, and because of things that are happening with climate and weather, water and water scarcity and water quality is becoming way more important in commercial real estate and for our customers.
Wow.
So we took the step back and we said, hey, if we want to enter into this to provide value to our clients, what's the best way to do that? So we took the step back and we looked literally across the globe, and we decided that we think the best company in the world on this is frankly Ecolab. They bought a company called Nalco a number of years ago. And you guys, people out there are probably seeing they do cleaning supplies. So back to your
Sure.
like what happens post-COVID. Yeah, they're doing great work there, and we're doing a lot of work with them. But like they have this amazing set of tools that says, hey, John, when you think about water, don't just think about your water bill, because in general, water's not crazy expensive with a few exceptions in a few markets. But your dependency on water is massive. It's in your HVAC systems. If you're in manufacturing, it's in your manufacturing. If you're in something like chip manufacturing, like you're at another level of like the purity of that water is well beyond what I think most people would ever imagine is possible. And so we want to be the partner that says, hey, look, we can think of a holistic process with you with Ecolab sitting by our side to help you optimize water. And when you do that, it's not only just impacting water, it's impacting your energy system. It's impacting the quality of how things are manufactured in your facilities, how you think about your data center and its ability to operate for the next 20 to 30 years. So we're super excited about this partnership, and so to stay tuned for not only more work with Ecolab, but a couple of more partnerships that we hope to announce in the near future.
That's wonderful. Congratulations. That's just wonderful. Let's go back to energy, electricity. You have to deal with NRG. We've been dancing around the terminology of AI. How is AI, in your experience, helping you and your colleagues in sustainability do more with less?
Oh, it's potential is massive. So I'd be excited to come back a year from now and talk in even more
Yeah,
detail
we're going to
about
have
this.
you back a year from now
Yeah,
because you
but
and I
like
know sustainability has no finish line anyway. It's just a darn journey.
it is. And so, especially coming to this from having spent 20 years in tech,
Yeah.
like as soon as I got here, I started to look at what was happening because AI was sort of unfolding at massive speed in front of us. It's like, oh my gosh, what's all the data that we could pull together that exists in the world that would impact and influence the way we could help our clients? And so we've actually built a series of tools that my own internal teams use to actually aggregate information that we have access to. Some of it's public, some of it's private. So I could sit with you and say, hey, John, look, I looked at your stuff and here's where I think you may have a lot of climate risk, or here's where I think you might have a lot of inefficiency. And so we're going to, evolve this tool a lot over the next several, I'm sure almost several years for as long as I do this job. But like I'd say we're in the first innings, and it is absolutely transforming the way my team works.
Is it fair to say that in the future, out of your 8 billion square feet, that you're going to be able to sit at your desk in the position that you're at, and you'll have a KPI dashboard on almost every square foot that CBRE manages around the world?
We absolutely need to get there. And so, and part of it, I mean, go all the way back to the beginning of our conversation,
Yeah,
starts with access to information,
yeah,
right? So one of the first things we need to do, and we're doing this very actively, is say, hey, John, back to your example in Chicago, right?
yeah.
Like you're choosing between two buildings. What are the lease clauses that make sure that you and us, if we're fortunate enough to be the manager of that space for you, get your utility data, get your water use data, get your air quality data if that's important to you. And a lot of times leases historically, think about somebody who's been in the same space for 20 years, every 5, 10 years are renewing that
Right,
lease, didn't address that.
right.
So we think really hard, like the first ingredient for success is information.
Mm,
Then it's insight, and then it's action. So you sort of got to go down that journey together with our clients, but also with your landlord. Or if you're the landlord, you've got the opposite thing, which is, hey, I want to have the relationship with the tenant where I've got some bi-directional flow of information here.
is the concurrently with the development of AI and as it evolves in front of all of us and part of all of what we do is then the tools, the tracking tools to be able to track the information in these buildings, to be able to feed the AI beast. So then the AI algorithms can analyze and then give you the right information that you need to make the best decisions.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of this, like, without getting too in the weeds on AI,
Right,
which is you and I could both build a model, right?
right,
And the thing that I love about being at CBRE is we have so much data.
right.
So if you're at CBRE and I'm not, let's reverse roles. And I point my data at a bunch of what's called synthetic data, which is, hey, I have an idea of how math might work in this place, and I point AI at stuff I think I might be able to find. That's very different than if I say, no, John, you're sitting on meter data. You're sitting on utility bill pay. You're sitting on all this stuff. And now you take the AI engine and point it at that. The results are going to be significantly more robust. And so what's so exciting for me doing AI within CBRE is we're fortunate enough to have such great data with our clients that I think we get to really drive some great insights and go pretty quickly down this path on the learning curve.
I want you to share some advice with our listeners and viewers out there that are the next generation behind us. There's a whole generation of high school, college, graduate students now, Rob, that are watching traditional media or reading traditional media, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Bloomberg, CNBC, all CNN, all wonderful and legitimate, incredible news platforms, and even social media platforms. And all they keep hearing now is that AI is coming for their career. AI is coming for their job. How would you coach them? How would you mentor them that to approach AI from a different perspective, not out of fear, but as embracement to use it to better their career? How does that, what's on your mind now in terms of the next generation and how they can best leverage AI to help advance their dreams and goals?
Yeah, I think, if you look back, and this is not my area of expertise, but if you look back throughout history, inventions were always going to be the end of employment, right?
Right.
So we used to have 80% of this country, I think, if I have my data right, doing agriculture. And then when we started to automate agriculture, it was going to be the end of careers, right? I was recently listening to a podcast about the history of data centers, and I didn't realize that when IBM introduced sort of tape and punch cards,
Yeah.
especially post World War II, it was going to be the end of employment.
Wow.
And so there's this natural tendency is when you can't necessarily, because you can't know what the future is,
Right.
right? But when you give people new tools, people are incredibly creative and energetic, enthusiastic. And, there's a bunch of mistakes along the way. But I mean, I was fortunate enough to be sort of at Microsoft when the internet really exploded.
Sure.
And we couldn't have imagined a lot of the stuff we're doing today. So I don't know where we're going to go with AI, but like uncertainty can be unnerving, but it could also be really exciting because like you can do all sorts of things now from your dorm room or your apartment or your house that you wouldn't need production studios or massive amounts, frankly, of consultants to do before. I can write math models and look at things from my computer today that I would have to have hired a group of people to do historically.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast recently where Jeffrey Katzenberg was talking about making animated films. And he said using AI compared to the days that he was at Disney and Pixar, that he's now going to be able to make animated films for 90% less cost than he used to make them 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's
Just
amazing.
great.
It's great.
It's just great. But we talked a little bit, we touched earlier, and you gave a great example of decision-making processes, the difference in decision-making processes for potential tenants in London versus Chicago. Talk a little bit about the position you sit in, given that you have a global footprint with billions of square feet under management, but over so many different continents that some are moving faster in sustainability on the linear to circular economy regulations. Some are moving slower. And it becomes this patchwork quilt around the world that you have to constantly be vigilant on and manage and understand to be able to even make the best decisions. When is there a time that you foresee, given that you're, for lack of better terms, a sustainability OG, that there's going to be some sort of day of reckoning of rationalization or harmonizing of these rules and regulations around the world? Or how do you manage that well-intentioned chaos?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the answer is it's a mix.
Mm,
Where we're seeing harmonization already is on some of the underlying principles and requirements for global or large regional reporting. And so some of the different groups that are getting together, because I think that's just a maturity thing. I
right.
mean, not to go too far back in history, but like railroads in the United States used to have different gauges and widths, right? And then eventually it sort of aggregated and consolidated into a unified approach. I don't know if we're going to get to one unified approach or not, but like I think we're starting down that path and that track, right? On the other side, like what's important in Arizona is not necessarily what's important in Rio de Janeiro, right? So like we absolutely need to embrace and celebrate the importance of local especially on a topic like environment where the nuances have to be driven locally.
Got it. How often are you, when you're looking for inspiration and aspiration, what the work that you're doing at CBRE now, how often do you look industry to industry for industry to industry information to further inspire you and help you vision out big things? Or how often do you look outside of the industry for other sustainability or impact officers in varied industries? Because you are truly touching every industry as the landlord for commercial, for industrial, and other types of real estate uses. So where does your inspiration and aspiration come from, Rob?
Yeah, I think it comes from everywhere. Like I
Mm,
feel so lucky. Like to your
mm,
point, I'll on a given day, and like I'll talk to a financial sector company in the morning, and in the middle of the day, I'll talk to a life sciences company, and
yeah,
then I'll be and it's true, like fortunately being in New York, like get invited to a lot of stuff. I'll get invited to an event, and it'll be like CSOs from three other industries, and I
right.
get to hear their pain points, and it's it's just literally inspiring to hear how they're attacking it. And we get to sit across all of that stuff and go like, okay, how can we be helpful?
Mm,
Commercial real estate is just one component of what all these companies do, but
sure.
yet we can learn from all of what they're doing.
I love it. You mentioned energy earlier. I didn't understand this, but in the what I read and when doing the homework for on for this podcast is that you actually acquired their renewable advisory business. And so how does that make you better? And then also I see a common theme growing here. The great announcement you just made with Ecolab, the wonderful information you shared about buying energy and electricity from energy, and also now acquiring their advisory business. You enjoy collaborating, and you must have a thesis that collaboration actually helps you get where you want to go faster and make a bigger impact that's more lasting. Is that sort of your thesis, and that's why you enjoy and you actively seek out credible and great opportunities to strategically collaborate with others?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the question for us is where do we want to vertically integrate and where do we feel that we have the best offerings or could acquire or build the best offerings in the world? And where do we think like there are businesses that have been around and have built unbelievable assets and presence and customer relationships? It's like you can't go that fast on your own. Why would you just go partner? And they're like, it's great. I mean, we didn't get into my whole history, but prior to doing sustainability at Microsoft, I ran a bunch of their partner organization work, and
Uh,
I saw it there firsthand. Like it is like back to like what do you tell people and young people? It's like partner, partner, partner. It doesn't have to be like CBRE and Ecolab, which is a great big partnership. Partner with your friends. Partner with people. Like massive amounts of my success and good fortune has been because I've built relationships, and literally 15 years later, I'm now doing work with people that I met 2000, 2005, 2007.
Rob, that continues to be a theme, what I see with great leaders like you. And that goes back to almost the discussion about AI. I tell young people, because I'm 63 now, and I tell young people that are chronically worried, somewhat over worried about this AI, but they're hearing it from all over the place that, hey, work on your personal fluency, your social fluency, your cultural fluency, because the people skills, which were ubiquitous 40 years ago when I was 21 years old, are no longer ubiquitous. People are more digital natives now, which has created this whole isolationist type society. And we've lost a lot of the social fluency. But now here you're just talking about why you're so successful. You leaned into your social fluency and your personal and emotional intelligence and have relationships that date back a long time that you're still able to lean on.
Yeah, and the thing that's great, because I have, you know, kids and nieces in that sort of age bracket, and
Yeah.
it's like if you use those digital tools well, your network actually can explode, right? It's
Good.
so great. So yes, there's definitely a risk of isolation, but there's also it's never been easier to be in touch with somebody. I recently just reconnected with somebody from 15 years ago that I worked with at Microsoft, and all it did was I still had their information on my phone and I texted them.
That's
And then boom, right back in the loop. So it's great. Like, yeah, the ability to build relationships over the career is probably one of the greatest gifts and the greatest investments you can make.
that's so smart. Rob, you've been there 2.5 years. You've already accomplished a lot. What's on your mind the next 2.5 years? Like what are you the most excited about when you get out of bed every day now?
I think I think we're just in the beginning stages of positively disrupting our own industry to drive sustainability and business growth at the intersection of those two trends. Like, I know what's going on in the political atmosphere. I understand the pushback. There's different camps and all that stuff. But if you just take a through line, it's very simple, which is where we started this conversation. Sustainability can drive value creation. And so I'm super excited because whether it's the Ecolab thing, which we're super excited about, or the AI thing that we talked about, I feel like we're just now getting these building blocks together to really show the marketplace over the next 2 to 3 years, like the massive amounts of value creation we can drive, whether you're an owner or you're a tenant, wherever your role is through commercial real estate.
Well, we can't wait to have you back on, because as you and I know, sustainability is just a wonderful journey. There's no finish line, and you're going to continue to drive great value creation for your clients and tenants around the world. I'm sure of that, Rob. Thank you again. Hey, for our listeners and viewers, he's Robert Bernard, the Chief Sustainability Officer at CBRE. To find Rob and all his colleagues and all the important and impactful work they're doing at CBRE, please go to www.cbre.com. Rob, thanks for the generosity of your time today, your vision, your wisdom, but most importantly, thanks for making a career and how you've made the world a better place. I'm really super grateful for that.
Hey, John, thank you so much for inviting me to spend time with you.
This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking platform revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With thousands of athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent, for speeches, custom experiences, live streams, and much more. For more information on Engage or to book talent today, visit letsengage.com. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com.